It's now time for The Duel, which is on a similar topic to my monologue. We've seen a recent pattern of arrests and rearrests with people like the TikToker Mizzy and the Just Stop Oil activist Phoebe Plummer. So I'm asking, have the police gone soft on crime? And more generally, is social disorder, such as the disruptions caused by Just Stop Oil, being encouraged by a soft approach from the police? Joining me now... Joining me now are my duelists, political commentator Emma Webb and co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Aaron, first let me ask you, what do you think of my view on Just Stop Oil and Roger Hallam?
I disagree with some of it.
Well, let's start with what you agree on. Let's get the common ground.
I think Roger Hallam is clearly... I've met Roger Hallam, I've interviewed him. Oh. He's a very intelligent, interesting man, but I think he would say he's an eccentric. What I find particularly interesting with him, though, is that he was a farmer. He was a smallhold farmer in Wales. And he was radicalised by successive failures of his crops, basically, extreme weather events. Now, a sceptic might say those have always happened. That's not to do with climate change. But in any case, that's what radicalised him. And I found that really fascinating. You know, we don't really associate farmers who are people who become radicalised. And I wonder if that'll happen more and more. In terms of their protests, I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg said something really interesting the other day in regards to Just Stop Oil. He said, or Extinction Rebellion, when you have 50,000 people in central London, they can shut down traffic because there's almost like a utilitarian argument there, you know? You are trying to make a point, and there's that many of you that I can understand the proportionality of it. But when it's 12 or 15 people, I don't think that's right. I completely disagree with that. And that was a novel argument, and I thought it was really, really interesting. I would say that direct action has always been a part of democracy in this country, really for the last century. That doesn't mean that every direct action group gets it right, or they're virtuous, or they're correct. But I do think there needs to be a balance in terms of what rights we do want to uphold here. I'll finish with this. I don't agree with fox hunting, for instance. Somebody like Jacob Rees-Mogg does agree with fox hunting. And if there was direct action similar to this by people who want to bring back fox hunting, I wouldn't want them to go to prison. I would want them to be disincentivised, perhaps, or channel that energy back into the democratic system. But I'm worried if we're too punitive with these guys.
OK. And Emma, so it sounds like Roger Hallam was looking for someone to blame or something to blame for his failed farming ventures and chose to blame the climate crisis or the government. Should he be looking at more democratic routes to protect? I mean, he has a political party, for goodness sake.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, about a lot of the climate change cause and net zero is that it's not something that is democratically mandated. You mentioned farmers. Well, farmers in the Netherlands are fighting to keep hold of their land because of draconian climate policies that are being imposed by the Dutch government to take their land away from them. So I think if they really were serious about getting political consent for the demands that they're making, and let's be clear as well that very often, as we saw actually with Phoebe Plummer when she was being interviewed by Jacob Rees-Mogg, it was very clear that she just kept saying, well, I'm not a scientist, I don't have to come up with the policy. So they're very vague about what they want. They want the adults in the room to stop climate change, but they're not very clear about exactly what it is that they want specifically in order to achieve that. And if they were having to play as part of the democratic system, not by just, walking in front of cars and stomping their feet and making demands and being hysterical, then they might actually have to think about material policies and what might actually work. And I think that they would find that when the British public are exposed to what it means to try and reach net zero, they would find that there isn't consent for that because they're anti-humane policies that are necessary. And I think that the public wouldn't support that if they realised what impact it would have on their lives.
But this is why I think it's a cult, because they don't know the arguments, they don't know the science, they just have these talking points that they've been assigned from their leader.
Yeah, it's a point that has been made by people who are experts in extremism, that there is a genuine concern that some of these eco-movements could go in the direction of eco-terrorism, because if you believe that your objectives are so important that it's OK to vandalise things like artwork, to damage property, to put people's lives at risk, as they actually have done by preventing ambulances from getting through and that kind of thing. If you believe that your cause is so important that the end of the world is nigh, then it does open the door for the potential of, if you really do believe that the world is going to end if nothing is done about this, what would stop you from trying to get your message across?
Yeah,
Nothing, really.
That's what concerns me, Aaron, because they do think the world is ending imminently, and so they are willing to take drastic measures. But it's the police's response to their measures that I'm concerned about. And it's not just Stop Oil. I mentioned Mizzy, this TikToker who's been going around terrorising people. Everyday people, invading people's homes, raiding Primark where people are just trying to work or shop. And the result is that the police say, oh, no, and then gets back out on bail, does it again. The same with Phoebe, the same with Mizzy. The police aren't really clamping down on crime anymore, are they?
I find Mizzy actually more of a terror to the public than Phoebe Plummer. And I think somebody like Phoebe Plummer, you can agree or disagree with her, your audience may disagree with her, but I think it's perfectly plausible that in 5 years, they'll very much agree with her. She might not do this anymore. She'll be a very productive member of society, really contributing. What I find Mizzy doing, and she believes in what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
And we all believe in things that we do, and other people disagree, and that's just how a free society works.
Right.
What I don't like with Mizzy is this nihilism to it. The complete absence of actually believing anything, which I think is a profound problem for us as a society more generally. I suppose I'd pose you a question. What do you think should happen to him? It sounds to me like you think he should serve prison time, but then I wonder how long and what kind of terms are we looking at?
He is antisocial. I think he's causing terror on the streets of London. I think he should be locked up for a few years until he grows up, and then he should be released back out on the streets then. What do you think, Emma?
I actually agree with you that there is something nihilistic about what Mizzy has done, but what he has, and I don't buy the idea that this is some kind of performance art that he's using to expose the flaws in the policing system. But he has actually exposed the way in which the police are soft. So I think the protest issue is separate because we do have a protest bill that has gone through Parliament that is draconian, and I think there are huge problems with it. So we do need to protect people's freedom of speech and their right to protest. I think the concern when it comes to the protesters is this two-tier policing where certain progressive causes get a light touch, whereas others get a very heavy hand. With Mizzy, this is different. His situation sort of highlights something else about the police, and I think it shows the way in which, and I'm sure many people will have seen the footage of police officers trying to wrestle people. I think it was at a bus stop, and those police officers are actually in danger themselves. They're put in harm's way. Probably they haven't been trained correctly. But there is a problem with the standard of policing. I think it's responsible for the decline in trust of the British public in the police, because they see that the police don't seem to be able to do their job, but they also can't. It's almost as if they don't. The leadership of the police force don't seem to want the police to be doing the things that the police are supposed to have as their bread and butter, like solving crimes, burglaries, that kind of thing. Because it's those small things, those small aspects of social disorder that when you get to the sort of like upper echelons, it has a knock-on effect. And I think Mizzy's having gotten away with it, with a fine, by the way, that was so small that it was probably covered by the fees that he got from doing interviews about it afterwards.
You sweat the small stuff, you don't get to the big stuff, absolutely. And I found it fascinating how nervous the police were when they were talking to Mizzy. That shows that the power structure is upside down. But anyway, there we are. That was Emma Webb and Aaron Bastani, my duelists. Thank you very much.